Now that we've seen how the various authentication and authorization measures work on our API, let's actually go and implement it. So in this lesson, we're going to go and see how we can enable token authentication and authorization on our API. The truth is that Django REST Framework makes this very, very straightforward. This is all of the code you need to enable an auth token on your API. You can see that I've imported in installed apps a new package, REST Framework.auth token. So the new content is the default authentication classes. Now, by default, Django REST Framework will use REST Framework Authentication Basic Authentication, which you see I have removed, and usually has REST Framework Authentication Session Authentication. Now, I've kept Session Authentication because if you remove it, you will no longer be able to use the browsable API provided by Django REST Framework. So you generally always want to have Session Authentication unless you want to disable the browsable API. I've then gone ahead and added the token authentication, which is provided by AuthToken, and which will allow us to send tokens to the API to then authorize specific access. Now, to actually get a token, I have to run a specific command. So I'm going to go ahead and run docker compose run. I'm going to remove the container when I'm done. I want to run the Django container, and within the Django container, I would like to run the command python manage.py, and then it's drf, I believe, create token for a user, and then I'm going to create one for my own account. Pow. Now you can see I could take this token and load it into a Postman environment and go ahead and use that to actually issue a request. Now, as a quick demonstration, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to mosey over to Postman. I'm going to close this collection. I'm going to create a new collection. Let's call it New Collection for Startup Organizer. And I know that my authorization is going to be an API key. You'll note that I'm not selecting bearer token. As it turns out, bearer token assumes that the token that you provide is preceded by bearer, as opposed to being preceded by token, which is what we want, right? We actually want token and then secret token, rather than bearer token, which is what bearer token gets us. So this is particular to Django REST Framework. There is probably a way to change this, mind you, but we're not going to be covering that. So I'm going to go ahead and I've created a new collection, and let's see. Now, over here, you can see that our default permission class is we're authenticated or it's read only. Now that means that at the moment, if we try and get information about a list of tags or a specific tag, the API will work fine without authentication. So what we need to try and do is we need to try and use authentication on an endpoint that is not for reading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new tag. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. I enter what I want. I'm going to go here. This is the URL that I wish to have. I'm inheriting my authentication from the parent. And in the body, I'm going to enter raw JSON. And let me see, I believe name. Let's say demo. Just for good measure, I'm going to say no auth. You can see authentication credentials were not provided. Okay. So then I'm going to go and say, oh, let's see the bearer token. And you can see I've just pasted the token in here. This is not what we should be doing, as we'll see here in a second. And I'll send, and it says, oh, the authentication credentials were not provided. And again, this is because it's not recognizing the token. Meanwhile, if I go to authorization, and for the moment, let's just pow. That now works. Oh, I issued a GET request. This is supposed to be a POST request. There it is. Okay, this is what we wanted. We've been able to do this. Now let's actually clean this up. Let's come back to what I set out to do originally, what I'm going to call secret token. And I'm going to come up and I'm actually going to use a new environment. I'm going to add, and I'm going to call this the new env. And you can see, I believe it's secret, what did I call this? Secret token? I'm going to enter the initial value and the current value. Whoops, there we are. Add, pow, and does it see it? No. Oh, I'm in the wrong environment. Haha. So I have to select the environment that I want, and then I can say secret token. It tells me what it is, and now let's, for good measure, say demo2, and there we are. So that is a demonstration not only of how to get set up with token authentication in Django and the Django REST framework, but also how to quickly build a collection with Postman and a single request, and a quick look at how authorization is going to be different. Now, we could spend a whole lot more time on token authentication. There's a whole world here. We could talk about how you might want to rotate it, how you might want to have specific tokens expire. And the truth of the matter is that Django REST Framework doesn't help you on this front out of the box. You generally do have to go and supplement Django REST Framework's behavior with some of the other tools. Thankfully, if you go to the, I believe the permission or the authorization page within the Django REST Framework's documentation, they have a full list of various options, and so you can read through what these are and see if they meet your purposes depending on what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve.